So, how can we help our students raise the stakes and bring more energy to their work? We start with team building exercise. At the beginning of the semester, we oftentimes start with these exercises to build a sense of ensemblement and community with our actors. It's important for them to get to know each other. It allows you as a teacher to get to know your students and for them to just build a strong rapport amongst each other. They're going to be working with each other and creating. So it's very important that all the students feel comfortable. They feel comfortable to express themselves and they learn how to work as a team and how to communicate with each other. It is also important for you as the teacher to create a safe space that students feel free to be themselves and you can build a relationship where the students trust you as well. So here are just a list of different exercises and activities. I will be attaching these to the Godot community discussion board so you can find more specific description of what these exercises are. The first one is boring facts, read my lips, the puppet dance party, rapid fire thumbs, three things that you have in common. So finding another student in the class and identifying through conversation three things that you have that they have in common with each other. The marshmallow challenge, the negotiation, big, tiny, and twisted. Uh, it's not on this list, but I love to play Everybody Who with my students where they're sitting in a circle. There's one student that is standing in the center of the circle and they'll make a statement that they think applies to everyone. If it applies to you, then you have to get up and find a new chair in the circle. For example, everybody who likes the color blue, everybody who speaks a different language, everybody who's seen a play before. And again, if that statement applies to you, you get up and find a different seat in the circle. I also introduced to the students at the beginning of the semester a warm-up, a full class warm-up routine. I lead them through these exercises and then eventually as we progress through the semester, I'll select a student leader to lead that warm-up. This really helps to build leadership skills with the students, allowing them to take charge at some point throughout the class period. Outside of using team building exercises to create a sense of entanglement and community within the students within the classroom, it's also important for you as a teacher to gain the trust of the students. I suggest listening, so really listening attentively and recalling some of the information. So if a student shares a story about themselves or an interest, pay attention, try to recall that information, using that information in follow-up conversations. It shows the students that you care about what they say and you're interested in them. And for some rate, it helps to build a relationship with the students and it allows them to feel a bit more comfortable and feel like they have a sense of place in the classroom and you actually do care. Um, Following through, so if you do make promises or you say you're going to do something, maybe you're going to reward them for a certain behavior, making sure that you're following through with those promises. You also want to demonstrate confidence and competence in the class. The more you are excited about what you're teaching and you're enthused and wanting to be there, it shows the students that you care and you're interested, and that a lot of time carries over with the students. Admitting to your mistakes. So this can be a tough one for us as adults, admitting to our students when we're wrong, but it shows that we can take ownership. It shows that everyone's not perfect and I believe it shows a sense of community that when I'm wrong, I'll admit it, I'll take accountability and correct my ways. So you're not just a person who's just on the students and correcting them and being almost like you're in a dictatorship, but really listening and taking account to what they're saying and adjusting your behavior if you've made a mistake. I also believe in giving students some opportunity at times to lead, especially when you recognize the students that have those natural abilities and even students that are a little bit more reserved and soft spoken, giving them that opportunity to feel like they can be heard and giving them an opportunity to lead at some point, whether it's in their small group or with whole class, but I do believe it's important to give them that opportunity, that responsibility at times. So, oftentimes I find that my young actors or students who are new to acting and being on stage, they tend to be very small. They're not giving as much energy in terms of volume and just using their entire instrument on stage. So I have a rehearsal exercise that I use to help them through this process. It's called Turning Up the Volume, and I have the students perform the scene at least 3 times. So the first time, I ask them to focus on the diction, the words. They need to make every word and punctuation important. So they learn about emphasis, how to place emphasis in our voice unit, and ways in which they can show emphasis. So I ask them to make sure that they're showing emphasis, whether it's by increasing the volume, by elongating the words, by changing the pace and the rate in which they say the word. So that's the focus for the first section, the first performance. Then they do the scene a second time, and this time we focus on increasing the emotion. So whatever emotion that the character is feeling, we're going to take it to the extreme level. So happiness has to be absolutely ecstatic. If the character is sad, then they're in absolute depths of despair. And if they're angry, then it has to be explosively furious. Then the third time, we focus on physicality, making that bigger. So if the student is pointing at someone, it's not just a point, it has to be an extension of the arm and almost like they're rushing towards this person in a very dramatic way. And I also ask them to add some type of vocalization to the movement as well. At the end of this exercise, I'll ask the students to sort of reflect on their experience. I'll ask them if they made any discoveries throughout the scene. And I also give them feedback of just how much more energy and how much more volume and diction that they had in the scene that made me want to pay attention as an audience member, that I wasn't struggling and fighting to hear and stay focused on what was going on in the scene. I sometimes record the exercise and have them watch it as a part of the reflection process. I find that younger actors, they tend to feel uncomfortable about just being a little bit larger than life. It feels like they're stepping outside their comfort zone. So seeing that though they may feel funny or feel silly during the exercise, that there were some really good choices that were being made each time they did the scene and how much of that they want to keep as they continue to work on the scene with their partners. I find that another issue that my young actors have is the anxiety and the fear of what could go wrong while performing in front of an audience. They have a lot of stage fright, just an overall like fear and nervousness of being on stage and being judged. So this exercise helps them to sort of get over that and work through that. It's called the what if game. The version of this game, it combines brainstorming, improvisation, risk taking, thinking on your feet, and just really going big. It helps the students address some of those fears that they have. So I'll have them brainstorm a list of scenario of events that could go wrong during the show. And then I put them in small groups, and they have to create these performances um, based on this scenario, and also come up with a solution of how could they address this issue if it happens on stage. Now, how do we help our actors physicalize emotions? Sometimes they can explain to you exactly what the character is feeling and what is happening in the moment, but their physical choices doesn't quite connect with or demonstrate what they can explain is should be happening with the character. So, how do we make emotional performances consistent and repeatable and connects with what's happening emotionally with the character? I sometimes ask the actors to connect or remember an emotion that they have experienced. So we'll start off with angry. Have you ever been angry? And most kids, the answer will be yes. Then we discuss, what does that look like in your body? How does your posture change? How does your facial expression change? What are some things that you do with your hands or the way you move when you become angry? Where do you feel it in your body? And we discuss that. So then we talk about the moment within the scene, if this is what the character is experiencing, because they have this objective, they're not getting what they want, this is how this situation, this other character is affecting them, and this is what they're feeling. How can I see that physically? Um, and like I stated, I discuss how they personally demonstrate that emotion within their body, and then we try to replicate that within the performance. If, have you ever been heartbroken before? How does that feel? How does that reflect in your body? How does your, again, posture change? How does your countenance change? What was your facial expressions like? And I sometimes will ask them to take pictures of their faces, and we create like a collage, an emotional collage, similar to what you're seeing in this image here on the screen. And I asked them to create a collage of pictures showing different facial expressions, incorporating somewhat of their posture and body language to communicate these different emotions. And that just brings their awareness to how they can keep their body engaged to really connect to what's happening emotionally with the character. To help the actors connect what they're doing to the emotional life of the character, I have them walk through what I call a gestures exercise. I remind the students that what we do, what the audience sees on stage, communicates a lot, sometimes even more so than what we hear, the words, the language. So, with this exercise, I give them a detailed list of precise facial expressions and body movements and gestures, and I ask them to physicalize the emotion that these gestures and movements are attempting to portray. So, for example, breathing. I may ask them to breathe fast or slow, or to stutter, or using a shallow breath or holding their breath. And then I ask them, what exactly, this is the gesture, what emotion do you think this gesture connects with? When an audience sees this on stage, and changing these slight, having these nuances. So whether you're breathing fast or slow, what does that communicate? What emotions does that communicate to the audience? I'll ask them to have a specific posture. So you're slumped, or you're standing upright, or you're slightly turning away from your scene partner, the other character in the scene. What does that communicate as far as relationship? What does that communicate as far as the emotion that you're experiencing, your character's experiencing in that moment? And again, here's some other examples. Maybe it's body tension. I have them clench their fists or fold their arms. I may have them stand close or far from each other, have them gaze at their partner, looking away or rolling their eyes. And we just discuss exactly what emotions do they convey? What can we gather about what's happening in the moment just from what we observe and what the character is doing? These exercises just really strengthen your students' awareness, and it helps them to make more specific choices. And the more you do these exercises with the different scene work, or if you're working on a play, it allows them to build these skills, and they almost become automatic that whenever they pick up a script and they're trying to create distinct, dynamic, three-dimensional characters, they will make these choices. How can I use my gestures? How can I physicalize the emotion? How can I use movement to convey my character's personality and age and the relationship? And they start to do these things without really focusing on them as much. It just comes naturally. It just becomes a part of their process. A part of this gestures exercise, I may ask the students to create a signature gesture for their character. Why would I have them do that? Well, a signature gesture, it creates an interesting physical layer to their character, something that's very specific, that's identifiable to their character and sets them apart from the others on stage. And it gives a lot of information about who the character is. It defines the character as someone different from the actor. And I believe it shows a lot of personality. Now, I tend to ask my actors to try to create characters that are very different than themselves, so they're not just using their own personality. I want them to make specific choices about how the character moves and speaks and how similar or how different that is from them. So I'll have a list of physical gestures and I'll ask them to identify what personality traits they think best fits or goes well with each gesture. So when would they use a signature gesture? Just during moments, significant moments during the show when they're trying to make a point, or maybe it's something that they do whenever their character is angry, or whenever, the character makes a funny comment. So this is not something that they'll necessarily use in every moment throughout the show, but just at specific moments that helps to kind of color or gives their character a bit of layer. How can they find the character's gesture? This comes from the script and the character analysis, really working through and combing through the script and paying attention to any important or significant moments where they think that gesture would sort of improve or emphasize what they're saying or doing. Sometimes the playwright may create patterns within the character emotionally, or sometimes just with the actions of the script, and you can use the signature gesture to emphasize or to complement those moments. So as they're working on a specific script, I'll have them come up with, let's say, 3 possible signature gestures for their assigned role in the play or in the scene. Then I'll have the students reflect on what they feel comes most natural or what looks best on stage. And they'll sort of use or pick one of the 3 to be their signature gesture. Sometimes they may not use it as a specific signature gesture, but they realize that this is a movement or this is a gesture that goes well with what's happening in this moment of the scene and really helps to connect to what's happening with the character emotionally. Just a physical way to demonstrate or how that plays out in their body. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, any comments, any ideas, please feel free to reach out to me using the Godot Community Theater discussion board. Please share any ideas of exercises that you use to help your young actors transform into this new character? What exercises do you use to help them to explore ways to create these dynamic characters on stage, engaging their entire instrument to make specific choices that demonstrates who this character is emotionally and mentally and physically?